Hello, everybody. My name is Doug Perry, and I am a professional resume writing coach for dental hygienists. I'm going to be talking to you today a lot about not just resumes, but also different ways in which you can stand out and land a great job. But first of all, congratulations on getting to this point in dental hygiene school. I know it's a long, hard road to get through school in general. And dental hygiene school is certainly one of the more difficult professions to jump into. And so congratulations on getting to this point. I know you're close to graduation, or at least I believe you are. And so I just wanted to wish you the best of luck as you forge out there into the job market and try to land a great dental hygiene job. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it is that I'm doing here today. And I'm going to push myself to the side just a little bit. Okay, so just a little bit about me and my wife as well, Tracy Perry. I graduated from Weber State University in Ogden, Utah in 1996 with a bachelor's degree in communications. And my wife, Tracy, graduated from dental hygiene school at Salt Lake Community College in 2010. At the time when she graduated, the job market was very much saturated. When she first wanted to go to school, which was back when I was going through school, the job market was not saturated. There were very few, much or less, dental hygiene schools at that point. And in the years between the time that I graduated and the time that she went to school, quite a few of them had cropped up. And so the job market situation had changed. There was a lot more dental hygienists entering the job market, and so there were a lot less job opportunities. And so when she graduated, the difficulty in finding a job was very apparent right from the beginning, and it was a little bit discouraging for her. So I put on my marketing hat, being that I work in marketing and communications throughout my career, and put on my marketing hat and put together a series of strategies that helped her eventually land a job really quick once we put those strategies in place. In fact, less than 30 days. And from that experience, I wrote a book called Landing a Great Dental Hygiene Job. We published that in 2011. I self-published it just online because it was just kind of a little hobby that I took on. And so once I put that out there and I started to share it with people, with dental hygiene schools and instructors and things, there was quite a demand for it. And in fact, so much so that in 2013, I decided to expand on that and create a business out of it called Get Hired RDH. And you can find the website for Get Hired RDH at gethiredrdh.com, which I launched in 2013. GetHiredRDH.com is all about providing dental hygienists with strategies and information to help them stand out and to land a great dental hygiene job, true to the mission of the book. But we also offer some additional services that would include resume writing, cover letter writing, postcards, and even LinkedIn profile updates. Since then, I've expanded that into website development and creating one-sheets and bios and other services for dental industry speakers and consultants. Sorry, I had to take a quick break there. So what has come of that is me talking to you today and talking to you a little bit about what it is that helps you to stand out. So first of all, I want to implant in your mind the concept that you have a story to tell. You have something about you, lots of things about you that are unique. You are different, completely different than every other dental hygienist out there. And there's about 205,000 of them in the United States. And that may sound discouraging because you think, oh, well, I can't, how do I stand out among that group? Well, the fact of the matter is that we as human beings are complex, and we all have individual and unique traits and abilities and skills. And there's all kinds of things that differentiate us. So what we really want to identify, and what I try to work with my clients on, is to identify what differentiates them. What is it that is about them that is unique? And so in that process of identifying what differentiates you, we want you to begin to develop a job hunting strategy that is geared around that whole concept, so that you can appear different than your peers. And we do that through finding out what your unique soft skills are, what your unique technical skills are, and also your accomplishments. Soft skills are things like that have to do with your personality. So things that demonstrate your ability in terms of a level or a degree, as opposed to something that you can quantify. So for example, you might have a soft skill of a great work ethic, or you might have a soft skill that you're very ambitious, or very, very personable or tenacious. Whatever those soft skills are that are unique to you, that help to identify or differentiate you, you want to make note of those and put this together as part of an overall profile. Technical skills are things that are more definable. They have sort of a measurable quality to them. So things like radiographs. How good are you at taking radiographs? Are you really good at that? Do you have skills that are exceptional in SRP, scaling root planning? Or maybe you know Dentrix really well, or your EagleSoft really well. These are sort of the technical skills that identify you as a unique dental hygienist. And then the third one has to do with accomplishments. And those are things, as the word suggests, that are things that you have achieved or are recognized for. So sometimes they might be something that's tangible, or sometimes not. But a couple of examples might be that you were selected as Employee of the Month, or perhaps that you reached a production goal of some sort. These are things that over the course of your career you'll accumulate more and more of. And so as you get further and further into your career, you'll want to make sure that you're keeping track of these things, so that you can put them together as part of the whole package of who you are. And you don't have to think of them, even as a student right now, as something that you don't have, because you probably have some very distinguished things that you've done. It could be things prior to dentistry. It could be things like scholarships that got you into dental hygiene school, perhaps. It could be what level of grades you've achieved, or something like that. But basically, it's just something that allows you to kind of brag about something that you've done, about how great you are as a dental hygienist clinician. Next, we want to talk to you about putting together your brand. And basically what your brand is the differentiators that I've just been talking about. Your soft skills, your technical skills, and your accomplishments are what differentiate you and make you different. When you can put those together into a complete package for your employer, when you can kind of indicate on your resume and in other materials that you have these exceptional gifts, you're basically giving a gift to your employer, or to the potential employer, that they can have trust in you. And trust is what they need, because trust is what compels them to hire you. So that's a very, very important gift that you're giving them, is the ability for them to be able to know who you are and feel like they can trust you, so that they can hire you. So as a part of your profile, you also have probably already done some of this, but I want to identify, where you're willing to work, how many hours a week you're willing to work, what days of the week you're willing to work, what type of an office, salary, and benefit considerations. So think through that. If you haven't done that, put it down on paper, along with what your accomplishments, your soft skills, and your technical skills are. Put all that onto paper so that we can create sort of an overall picture that will help you to basically focus on what it is that the type of office that you want to work at. And the reason you want to focus is because you can get yourself distracted by looking at all these job announcements and saying, oh, I think, that would be a great one right there. But, well, it's actually 45 minutes away. So you'll find that as you define where this range is of where you're willing to work and under what kind of conditions you're willing to work, and also what kind of office fits your personality, fits your soft skills, your hard skills, your technical skills. All of those things put together will help you to really focus so that you can save time and resources, because honestly, it takes a fair bit of time to find a job, and it takes a fair bit of time to ferret out who it is that you want to work for. And so if you know kind of what those parameters are going in, it'll save you the time of having to go for job interviews, applying for jobs, and indicating an interest in jobs that you ultimately really are not going to be applying for, or that you wouldn't take. So put all of that together and create this profile that you need so that you can become more efficient in your job search. Now, let's talk about your job hunting materials. First and foremost is your resume, of course. Then we're going to talk a little bit about your cover letter, but there's also some other things, such as thank you letters, testimonial sheets, postcards, and business cards that I'll touch on as well. But really quick, one important point that I wanted to bring out to you is that when you're putting together your materials, you don't have to feel obligated to share your address where you live. Employers don't use that really anymore, other than against you. I should point that out. You have the ability to share with them your phone number and your email address, and that's really all that they need to have in order to contact you. When you put your address on there, they potentially could use that against you, in that they would find out where you live, which is of course a privacy concern, but also they may use that against you in terms of, well, that person doesn't look like they would be close enough to our office to work here, so we don't want to hire them. We don't even want to bring them in, because if they're 30 minutes away from the office, that's too much of a potential possibility that they may not show up to work on time, or that they'll have other issues that will prevent them from getting to work. And so you don't want to include your address. There is a service out there called Google Voice, and it allows you to create a phone number where you can route those phone calls to that number to your cell phone. So you can set up an independent phone number with its own text and voice messaging services, all for free, and through Google Voice, be able to keep your privacy for your phone number intact as well. So I would encourage you to look at that. It also allows you to create that voice messaging system that allows you to create sort of a professional response when you aren't able to pick up, something that indicates that you're a professional, and that you're looking for a job and then an opportunity to work for them, and just something that's a little bit more customized to your job search. Now, there's some rules in creating materials. There's a lot of rules, but these are very, very important when you're creating a resume or cover letter and other materials. Is that, first of all, you don't want to have any errors, because employers will definitely use that against you. I think most of you understand that, but a lot of people, I still see resumes come to me all the time that have spelling errors, grammar errors, and other kinds of things that need to be corrected. And you really do not want to be sending out a resume with those. A lot of the time, employers are pretty forgiving and will sometimes not even catch the error. But there are some out there, when they're trying to be more scrutinizing of who they want to bring in, they'll use anything against you. as an opportunity to no longer have to consider you for the job. And so spelling errors and things like that are one of those areas. So you don't want to have any errors. Second is the 6-second rule, and that has to do with a study that was done by the Ladders, which is a job hunting firm, online job hunting firm, that they did several years ago, where they were able to determine that employers only want to spend about 6 seconds, only spend rather about 6 seconds on a resume. And that's basically the amount of time it takes for them to review it really quickly, scan it really quickly, and decide whether or not they want to continue with this person or put it in the trash bin. So you really, really have to think about that 6-second rule when you're putting together your materials, because you want to make sure that it's something that's going to be very unique and something that stands out and gets you noticed. Now, there's ways in which you can do that. And so some of the rules that I've included for creating materials is to use color. Use it to help you stand out, to get you past that 6-second rule so that you can impress people. Fonts is another one. Make sure that you're using a font that is clean, easy to read, isn't frilly, but looks professional. Another rule is to ensure that you have good white space, that you're not cluttering things together in big chunks of text, and that you have more of a clean professional appearance on your resume and also your cover letter. Using graphics to kind of help guide the employer or the reader through your materials so that they can better absorb what it is that you have to sell them on, which is you, of course. And then, of course, pictures. There's a little bit of a controversy about that. Some people feel as though that you shouldn't put a picture on a resume, and some feel that you can absolutely put a picture on a resume. And so I always leave that up to my clients to decide what they would prefer. But that is an option as well, and it does help you stand out to include one. And then the last one is paper. Paper comes in lots of different thicknesses, and the more professional papers, the ones that are more expensive, are a little bit thicker. Not quite as thick as cardstock, but a little bit thicker than copy paper. And so that's another way that you can stand out and make sure that you have a really good presentation to share with people. Now, let's talk about the resume itself. There are two basic types of resumes out there in all of the professions, not just dental hygiene, but all of them. The first one is on the left, you can see, is called the functional resume. And then the other one is called the reverse chronological resume. If you were to put them side to side, you may not necessarily see what the big difference is, but the main key difference between them is found in the work history. If you'll see on the left that the work history for a functional resume is much more abbreviated. It just includes the name of the company, the job title, where it's located, and then the years in which you work there. Whereas on the right, in the reverse chronological approach, you'll see not just that information, but you'll also see what it is that you did for that particular job. There's a number of bullet points, as you can see, listed for each job. And so basically what you're doing is you're taking the information in the reverse chronological resume that is beneath each job, and you're putting it into its own section in the section that I've labeled there in the functional resume called skills and experience. And there's a reason why you would do that, and there's a reason why you wouldn't do that. Basically, and I'm going to back up just a second here just to talk a little bit about the difference. Actually, I think I've already kind of covered that, so I apologize. But yeah, the header section is basically the same. The about me or summary statement is the same. Your education history is going to be the same. The license information is going to be the same. It's going to be in the same section, type of a section. And same with the optional items, such as maybe references or perhaps involvement you've had in professional associations. So those are the things that are the same. So what is it that's different? Well, again, it's going back to my previous slide, it has to do with the information that is found in underneath your work history and how that's displayed. Now, there's a reason, as I was starting to say, there's a reason why you might want to consider using a functional style resume as opposed to a reverse chronological as a dental hygienist. Because as a dental hygienist, you are typically working the same type of a job throughout your career, or at least in the parts of your career where you're working as a clinician. And so it doesn't make sense to list in like a reverse chronological resume all of the information for each job, under each job, as being the same information. So it becomes, in other words, it becomes a little bit redundant if you're putting that you do SRPs under each clinical job that you've had. So the better way for a dental hygienist to approach it is to take the functional style of resume and instead list out all of the things that you do as a clinician in its own section, and then focus the work history section on being very brief and just talking about the job itself. You know, what the name of the office was, what your job title was, and what years you worked there. I hope that's a little bit clear, but basically what I'm saying is that the functional style resume is the better approach, in my opinion, to creating a dental hygiene resume. Now, you may find that as your career moves along, you're doing other things besides working in a clinic, and at that point, you may want to consider moving from a functional style resume over to a reverse chronological style resume so that you can talk about the unique things that you're doing in these other additional jobs. So we've talked a little bit about what the difference between those two resumes are. Let's talk about the different parts of a resume. So the first part that I'm going to talk about is the header section. That's where you put your name and your credentials, your phone number and your email. And you could also include things like a photo, perhaps, or a headline, and also if you have a LinkedIn address. So the header section obviously goes at the top. It's the part that kind of grabs attention the most and first. And as you can see in the example that I have there on the screen, I have a little bit of a graphic that is sitting behind it. So to kind of bring that name out and punctuate it a little bit stronger than maybe if you just put your name. The next part of your resume is what I call the About Me section, or sometimes it's called a summary section. But it's basically a short statement that is 1 to 3 sentences of who you are. It's sort of your personal brand. Some people might call it an elevator pitch. But it helps to kind of begin to build trust with that employer so that they understand who it is that you are, and so that they know what to expect if they were to hire you. Now, in the past, you may have seen that on resumes that section may have been called an objective, where you say, I am looking for this type of a job. Well, that's kind of old school. It's kind of going away. Most resume writers will tell you today that the better approach is to really begin to sell yourself and to begin to describe who it is that you are for an employer so that they know more about you. Because honestly, everybody already knows what your objective is. Your objective is to get a job, right? And so rather than waste the space on a traditional way of portraying that information, it's a better practice to instead just talk about yourself, talk about about me, or provide them with a little brief summary of who you are to help them get to know you a little bit better and build that trust. The next section has to do with, in a functional style resume, has to do with your skills and your experience. So with this section, what I would recommend that you do is that you write a series of bulleted statements that begin with a verb at each end, at the beginning part of the statement, and that talks about your expertise in each area of clinical work. So for example, that you are proficient, that's the verb, in oral anatomy and instrumentation. And just go down the list and list out the areas in which you have some particular strengths as it pertains to the clinical work. And I could list out a whole bunch of them for you, but I think it's better for you to be able to figure out what that is for you, because each person is different, and that's what helps to kind of differentiate you and separate you from the competition for a job. So list out maybe, I don't know, 10 to 15 bullets of items that impact clinical work, or that involve clinical work, that you have as a skill or as an area of expertise, and begin each one of them with a verb and talk about very short, very succinctly, very concisely what it is that you have to offer that employer. Now, as your career progresses and the opportunity for you to shine increases and you have more and more experiences, you'll want to morph those bullets and skills to be something more along the line of accomplishments. So instead of talking about your proficiency with something, instead you may want to morph those bullets into actual results that you have achieved for your employers. So, for example, generated more than 10,000 per week in hygiene production might be one that you would consider. Another might be that you were chosen as Employee of the Month in January for providing exceptional service. Whatever that is for you, it's going to be different for everybody. But whatever that is for you, keep track of that information throughout your career. Keep track of those accomplishments so that you can incorporate those into your resume as you grow and as you become more entrenched in dental hygiene work. The next section has to do with your work history. Now, the best way to do this is, and going back again, you can, as you recall, the work history in a reverse chronological style resume was more of a listing of each job with things that you did under each job. And we've already established that with a functional resume, you can take that information out, and so that you don't have to be redundant with it, you can include it in your skills and experience section. So with the format that I recommend for creating a work history is to simply list the name of the office, or perhaps even the doctor, the name of the city and the state that office is located, followed by your job title. And then last, you would want to put the range or dates that you worked there from. Now, some people will include the month that they started there and the month that they end. That's fine, totally fine. You can do whatever you want with that information. I simply like to keep it as clean and simple as possible to help the person at the other end who's reading this resume to quickly get the information without being bogged down by months. And so I leave the months out typically, and we'll just include the year. The other point I was going to make is that the order that you put this in is in reverse chronological style. So you want to start with your most current job at the top, and then list your next job that you took before that one, all the way down until you start at the bottom with your oldest job. So that's the order that you start those in. And then I also point out that it really helps the reader to be able to see what the information is in lists like that, when you can use things like bold and italics to kind of emphasize certain aspects of the information. So I would recommend you figure out a format for doing that. I typically like to put my work history with the name of the company or the name of the doctor in bold, and then sometimes I'll use italics for the location, sometimes not. But just figure out a format that you can consistently use throughout your resume that works well for you. Then the next section is very similar to the work history section. It has to do with your education history. And with your education history, you of course want to start with the name of the institution, followed by the location where it's at, and then the degree in which you earned at that particular institution. And then finally, the year that you graduated from there. Now, there's also things that you can include under each of those listings. So, for example, under your place, the location where you got your bachelor or associate degree in dental hygiene, you may want to include in there that you got a scholarship or that you got some sort of you were participated in maybe the American Dental Hygiene Association Student Association as the president or something like that. You can include that in that information as well, just kind of underneath each line. And sometimes to set it off and to make it look appear a little bit different, I'll put it in italics. But that's, again, up to you. One thing you don't want to include in your education history is your high school diploma. I think it's pretty well assumed that if you graduated from college, that you also completed high school. And there's no point in including that. It just takes up space and doesn't really add anything new or different for anybody. And then finally, the last section of a resume is oftentimes what I will include is the licensure information. So I'll start with something like your state license and possibly the license number. If you feel inclined to include that, you don't have to, but I think it adds a nice little touch. Also helps the employer be able to look you up to ensure that you are licensed, in fact. And then to list other licenses and certifications, and then perhaps the dates that you acquired them or renewed them as necessary. Whatever you feel that the format that works best for you. But licensure is an excellent section to include at the bottom. And then if you still have space, and you notice that the resume that I've shown you on this screen shows that the most of the space is pretty well taken up. But if you still have space, maybe your work history isn't as long, or you don't have as much to include for your skills and experience or licensure, then you may want to include some other things. And so there are other things that you can include on a resume. But basically, the general rule of thumb is that anything that's relevant to that particular job that you're applying for. So if you're applying for a clinical job in dentistry, then you want to make sure that whatever you're offering up is relevant to a clinical job in dentistry. If you were looking to go from being a clinician to perhaps an educator, or perhaps let's say a sales rep for Henry Schein or something like that, then you want to talk about other things, other skills that you have that may not necessarily be relevant to a clinician, but would be relevant to a sales career or as an instructor at a dental hygiene school. And that might include things like, for a dental hygiene school, a more robust display of information of continuing education that you've received over the years. And then that becomes more of what they call a curriculum vitae, which is another way of saying resume. It's another word for resume. But typically a curriculum vitae is what they refer to in academics as your resume. And so a curriculum vitae is a little bit different in that it includes a much more robust list or display of your educational background, and perhaps even some other things that you've done that would be useful for somebody deciding to hire you as a clinical dental hygiene instructor. And that things like community service, memberships, leadership roles, articles that you may have written, presentations that you've delivered, and additional significant education that you've received. So any of those things can be included on a resume as well. Any of those things could be considered relevant to a clinical dental hygiene job. It just kind of depends on how you want to display it and how much room you have and how many pages you want to use up, quite frankly. For a clinical dental hygiene job, I think you really only need about 1 page to stand out and to land a job. I don't think that there is a lot of information on page 2 that is going to sway an employer to hire you that you couldn't have already put on page 1 and had that happen before you even got to page 2. Just there are so many candidates for clinical dental hygiene jobs these days that you really want to make sure that your information is concise and short and brief, and one page tends to take care of the job for you. As you get further down your career, you want to look at other job opportunities, then certainly expand into two pages and consider that as an option. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about cover letters. There is a standard cover letter format that I follow when I create cover letters for clients. And that is that the first paragraph has to acknowledge and formally apply for the position. So you talk about how you heard about the job and that you understand that there is a job opening and that you are interested and want to formally apply for it, is basically how I word those. Paragraph 2 acknowledges at least a few of the requirements of what it is that they're looking for and how you meet those requirements. It could be something like, they're looking for somebody with experience with Dentrix. And so you want to say, I understand you are looking for somebody with experience in Dentrix. I want you to know that I have that experience, basically is how you would say that. Paragraph 3 is where you write about some additional skills that you can bring to the table that they don't necessarily mention, but you know that as a clinical job is going to be important. And so you might talk more about your soft skills, how you're able to relate with patients, how you're able to sell treatment to them, how you're able to work really well with the rest of coworkers and staff and blend in with them. Those are the kinds of things that you might want to touch on in paragraph 3. And then paragraph 4 has to do with the ask. You ask for an interview at that point. You say, hey, I've really look forward for an opportunity to meet with you, and here's my contact information. But again, even with the cover letter, you want to keep it very, very brief, very, very simple. You don't want to overwhelm them with information because they just don't have the time to read it, and they probably won't read it. So the easier job that you can give them of going through your content, whether it be your resume or your cover letter, the better off you're going to be. Now let's talk about some other job hunting materials. Business cards. I think those are kind of a critical piece that a lot of dental professionals don't realize that are important. You just never know who you're going to run into, and when you're at a conference, it's so easy to just hand them a card with somebody that you've just met or that you want to talk to further down the line. And a business card is just a really, really simple way for you to do it, very inexpensive. You can print those on places like vistaprint.com for less than $10 for a batch of a couple hundred. It would probably take you years to go through. Postcards. I'm going to talk a little bit more about postcards here in a minute. Testimonial sheets. Testimonial sheets, I think I cover yes, I'm covering that next, but testimonial sheets are also important. LinkedIn profiles are great. Websites, resume videos. These are all things that you can do to sort of elevate your game as a job hunter and make yourself stand out and be different, because a lot of people truthfully just don't go to the trouble of creating all these things. They'll create a resume and maybe a cover letter, and that's about it, and call it good. But when you really go to the extra mile to create these extra job hunting materials, it just makes you look really professional, really polished, and the type of person that most employers would really like to have on their staff. So let's talk about a few of these. Testimonial sheet. A testimonial sheet is sort of I don't want to take credit for inventing it, but really it's not something that a lot of people have seen or have done. And basically what it is just a sheet, an additional sheet that you would put with your resume and your cover letter. So it's a third sheet that has information such as quotes from people who you have either worked with as a coworker or you have worked for as an employer. And in some cases, when you get permission from a particular patient, they can provide you that, that permission and provide a quote as to how great you are for their care as a dental hygienist. The point of a testimonial sheet is that It provides third-party validation. So in other words, it's really easy for anybody to just go and say that I'm just amazing at this or that. But when you have somebody else saying how amazing you are at something, it's quite a different proposition and something that you definitely want to seek for. You want to have other people validate how great you are as a clinician, because that adds a layer of trustworthiness in somebody who doesn't know you and a potential employer. And so you want to keep all of that verbal and written positive feedback that you receive throughout your career, keep it in a file, and then create a testimonial sheet from it. And it doesn't have to be very long. Each quote could be just 1 to 3 sentences. And then, of course, you want to provide an attribution and who that person is, and perhaps even the date that they provided that quote. But it helps to kind of, again, try to validate what it is that you're trying to sell, which is you. Now, let's talk about postcards. Postcards are really inexpensive as well. Just like a business card, you can get them for, I think it's about 25 cents a piece if you order through vistaprint.com. And I create them as well for my clients. And so that if you're in need of somebody to design it for you who's done postcards for dental hygienists specifically, I've done that and can help you with that. But it's, again, very inexpensive. It's a very, very fast way to spread out into the community who it is you are and that you're available to work. And you can target the audience. So for instance, if you have, let's say, 100 dental offices in your community, you can look up all the addresses for those offices and you can send one postcard to each one of those offices. They're very eye-catching, they're attention-grabbing, they're easy to save, and this is a really important thing, because what tends to happen is when a dental office receives a postcard from a dental hygienist who's looking for a job, they'll hang on to it. And the reason that they hang on to it is, even though they may not be looking to hire somebody right then and there, dental offices are always looking for good temps that they can call on to help them out. And maybe you don't want to be a temp, but honestly, a lot of times that's how people get jobs, is by temping at an office first, and the office really likes them. That's also sometimes called a working interview. And so if you can get your postcard out into the community, into the offices that are within your target area, they will tend to get saved. They'll tend to get posted to like a wall or a cork board in the office, or maybe even the refrigerator or the top drawer of the office manager, just saved somewhere close by, so that they have somebody that they can call when they need to have a temp. Or if they have a job opening, they have somebody who has already sent them this impressive postcard, who clearly shows that they like to go the extra mile. And who doesn't want to hire somebody like that as a person that they can bring in for an interview and consider for a job opening? So it's a very, very, very effective tool. I've had so many of my clients who have gotten jobs from postcards. Now, the most important client, of course, is my wife. Again, she was a graduate of dental hygiene school in 2010, and this was, in fact, one of the strategies that we put into place right away, was to create a postcard for her. And just as a case study, I'll share with you that we sent it out to about 110 offices. It cost about $50 to $55 each time we would send one of these out to offices. So $50 to $55 to send out to 110 offices 3 times. You can see the 3 different postcards that we used. And you can see also that from that, she got some very effective results that more than paid for those cards. From those, she was able to get 3 job interviews that were not advertised. These were jobs that they had just barely opened at the time that the postcard hit their office, and so they didn't need to advertise it. They just brought her in for a job interview because they were impressed that they got this postcard from her. One of those jobs ended up hiring her. The other one wasn't quite the hours or something that she wanted, or days of the week. And then there was another one that wanted her to do some additional marketing work, and she didn't really want to do that. But one of the offices did hire her, and she's still there today. She's been there for coming up on 8 years now. So basically, her results paid for themselves easily, many times over. I mean, it's just impossible to even compute it, because she's made lots of money from that job over the years. And on top of that, she also got lots of temping work, several days that she was called in to work for different offices, and also lots of temping work that she had to turn down. There was so much that she literally couldn't do it all. And this is not an isolated case. I've had this happen with lots and lots of my clients, who always tell me whenever they send out a postcard, I had more opportunities to work than I could possibly even cover. And so I would highly recommend that you consider sending out a postcard as a dental hygiene student just after you graduate, to get your name out there really quick, and so that you can get yourself some temping opportunities very quickly, and potentially one of those will lead you to a job. And again, the shelf life on these is incredible. My wife was able to get phone calls from these postcards that she sent out, and she sent out one per month over the course of 3 months, until she found the job that she wanted. And she was able to get calls from these postcards for the next 3, 4, 5 years, we think. It was hard to tell for sure the last couple of years that she was getting calls, we think, from them. But that appears to be the case. And it also appears to be the case from a lot of the clients that I've worked with, who say that that has been the story with them as well, that they get calls for several years after they send these out. So I'm going to talk to you also about packaging your materials. It's really important that you package up your materials. When you send somebody a resume, don't just send them a copy of your resume. Send them a copy of your resume, your cover letter, your testimonial sheet. If you have a postcard, throw it in there as well, and put it into a nice presentation folder that you can purchase from Office Max or Office Depot, whatever your local office supply store is, for sometimes usually less than $1 for a packet of several of them. Especially when it's an office that you really want to communicate and give an impression that you are organized, and that you go the extra mile for. The ones that you really want the job for, go the extra mile for them, and they'll notice it, and they'll see that you are different. And again, it's all about being different. It's all about differentiating yourself. Packaging everything up really helps to do that, helps you stand out. But wait, there's more. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about digital materials, because some of the strategies that we used with my wife that were really effective included some of these digital materials. For her, I created a website, and we created a video, what we call a video resume. And I've got links to those here in just a second. I'll show you on the next slide or two. And then also an online profile in LinkedIn and on Facebook. I created for her, of course, the traditional LinkedIn profile, which I think everybody should have. They're free to do. And then also created a Facebook page for her so that she could begin to market herself through Facebook, not just her individual personal profile, but through a page, and so that she could use that for marketing herself as a temp or as an employee. We really didn't get a chance to develop that one as much, because she got a job fairly quickly, and we just didn't need it. But it is an option for you to use social media. All of these things have three things in common. First, that they grab attention, and you need to grab attention in a saturated job market. You've got to get people's attention quickly, because there's a lot of people for them to consider for a job opening. And so you want to make sure you're one of the ones that really stand out. Number two is that these are very unique opportunities. These are very unique things, materials. Very few hygienists, very few of you that are watching this video probably will even go to the trouble of creating some of these because they take time, quite frankly. But when you land a great job, I don't think you really care how long it took you to get it. You're just glad that you got it. And so it is something that is unique. These things are unique. Not very many people will do them. And so because of that fact, they do grab attention, and they do create sort of an impression or an aura around you that you're somebody special that they really want to hire. And then the third thing is that links that you send out are just flat out irresistible. When you send a link out and say, hey, check out my resume video, I can guarantee you, you're going to get a click-through rate of nearly 100% when somebody sees that you have gone to the trouble of creating a resume video, or gone to the trouble of creating a resume website, or have a complete LinkedIn profile. They're going to go to the trouble of clicking on the link to see what it's about, because so few people do these things. And so it's just irresistible. I've got some examples that I can share with you of the video resume that we created for my wife. One of them, I actually created two. One, this is the more simplified version. The more expanded version that we created had sitting down with her and interviewing her for about 2 minutes. You want to make sure your video is very short, because people will click on it and they'll watch it, but they don't want to watch it for more than a minute or two. So you want to make sure it's very, very short, very brief, right to the point. So the one that we had, the more extensive one that we had, was about 2 minutes, and we interviewed her, asked her questions about what she loved about dental hygiene, about her personal life, things that she wanted to share, hobbies and things like that, just so that we could build that trust in the employers that were considering her for a job. And then the next one that we did was a little bit less extensive, and that's the link that you see there. It's basically just a slideshow, but it's an effective way for you to truly market yourself as somebody who is different. And then you'll also see the second bullet down as a resume website that I created for a dental hygienist not too long ago. You can see how you can use a website as an effective tool for marketing yourself and extending and creating a little bit more time for yourself in front of employers so that they know who you are. And then I give you an example of a Facebook page that we created for my wife. We still have that in place, actually. She still has it. We don't really use it, but that is an example of a way that you can use Facebook outside of your personal profile to market yourself as a job seeker. Now, where are the jobs? Good question. Now, there's a difference between advertised and unadvertised jobs. Advertised jobs show up on job boards. Unadvertised jobs are filled by connections. Now, you may be surprised to learn that according to the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, that more than 70% of all job openings are unadvertised. So they are jobs that employers will find somebody that they've networked with, or maybe a coworker recommends somebody to them. They don't even have to go on a job board. And so most of the job opportunities that are out there, quite frankly, are found through networking and through who you know. So as a part of your job hunting strategy, you need to have, of course, you need to have a resume, you need to have a cover letter, you need to have a presence so that you can introduce yourself to the other 30%. But the vast majority of the job opportunities out there are through networking. And so you need to address both of those strategies as a part of your career advancement in clinical dental hygiene and in dental hygiene in general. There are lots and lots of sales opportunities that come to dental hygienists working for a manufacturer or something like that. And those oftentimes go to people who have networked and have gotten to know the employer that way. So networking is a critical piece to this whole unadvertised job opening opportunity. Involvement with your association in component conferences and meetings, that's a very important piece. Temping and subbing, that's also where you can find great networking opportunities. social media, and then of course resume and postcard drops. If you are not on social media and using it to network, you really are missing the boat. There are a ton of opportunities to get to know other hygienists in your area and nationally through social media. Facebook in particular has a plethora of dental hygiene groups that you can belong to and network with. And I see almost every day where people are getting jobs from those network associations through those groups. So I highly, highly encourage you to get involved early on in your career and stay involved in all of those areas to address the unadvertised job market. Now, there are, of course, advertised job openings. There are national job boards. There are local job boards. There are corporate or practice websites that will list job openings. So, for example, if you are interested in working in a local clinic or office, you'll want to make sure that you stay in touch with those offices, their websites, and also their social media pages so that you can see when a job opening crops up in those. And then, of course, through social media in general and your social media pages locally, your local Facebook page, you'll find lots of job openings listed in there that are advertised in there. And then the last one would be staffing agencies. Occasionally, staffing agencies will be involved in recruiting for a specific job opening. I shouldn't even say occasionally. I think it happens probably a little more often than that. But nevertheless, they are a source for advertised job openings as well. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about nailing your job interview. And I'm not going to go into great depth here because, quite honestly, there are a lot of different ways in which you can nail a job interview. But I do want to touch on some of the basics so that you're familiar with them. First one is how you dress. Make sure that you are dressing in business casual or perhaps business professional, depending on what you kind of think about that particular office and what they might have as an expectation. You'll never not impress somebody. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but you won't not impress somebody if you always go business professional. Sometimes people who dress business casual may not get a pass, and so I always recommend business professional first, but business casual oftentimes is fine as well. So you want to make sure that you're looking the part, you're looking professional for your job interviews. Now, obviously, a working interview is a different situation. You're going to be wearing scrubs at a working interview for a clinical dental hygiene job, and so you, of course, are going to come dressed for that appropriately in that way. But overall, just keep your approach to your dress and your styles to a conservative, modest approach so that you can appeal to the most number of clinical opportunities that are out there. Certainly, you don't want to wear jeans. And again, scrubs are fine for a working interview, but not for a sit-down interview. And you may want to clarify that when you get the call for an interview, is if it's a working interview or if it's a sit-down formal interview, because that would obviously make a big difference in how you dress and how you present yourself on that day. Now, there's also some tips about the day before your interview day. You'll want to make sure that you're very, very prepared for that. And this is the opportunity to do that in the days that you are leading up to your job interview. You want to make sure that you're gathering up all your materials. So, for example, if you're going to take with you another copy of your resume to hand to them, and that's very much appropriate to do that, make sure it's ready to go. You want to research a little bit about the practice. I call it stalking sometimes, but you want to research a little bit about who they are and maybe some of their interests as individuals that possibly you could create some connections on, because when it comes time to do small talk, you want to be prepared to talk to them about things that can create connections between you, whether it's the office manager and you're waiting for the interview, or it's the office manager in an interview, or it's the doctor. Try to, as best you can, find out a little bit of information about who they are and learn about some of their likes and maybe dislikes so that you are are adequately prepared to have small talk with them and can make a favorable impression with them. You want to know and practice that first question, your response to that first question. And almost always the first question that an employer is going to ask you in an interview is, tell me about you. So you want to make sure you know that frontwards and backwards so that you're prepared to give them the adequate response for that. Practice, and that'll help you so that you're not as nervous. Practice delivering 30 to 45-second responses when you get your interview questions. Don't take very long. You don't want to go into too much detail, but you do want to address short stories that you can share with them as examples of how great you are. But keep your responses short, 30 to 45 seconds. Prepare yourself 1 to 2 questions, not related to compensation, because you don't want to look like you're only interested in how much you get paid. Ask them about their office, what kinds of things they're expecting from you, and what kinds of philosophies that they have about this or that. Come prepared to ask them a couple of questions. It shows that you're engaged, and it shows that you're interested in doing a good job for them. It also provides an opportunity to get into a discussion with them. And that's always a good thing. That always helps kind of build those levels of trust. And again, like I said, ask questions that reaffirm what you have that they want. So things like if they are looking for somebody who is really good with Dentrix, let's say, you want to ask a question about Dentrix, how well they need to know, so that you can respond in a way that affirms what it is that they're looking for. Interview day. Drinks and food, other than water, should probably be a no-no if you're driving to and from the office, to and from the interview. You definitely don't want to be having a spill occur that would create a huge problem for you. Run through a lot of mental positive affirmations about yourself. Talk to yourself about how great you are at this or how great you are at that. Read through your resume. That'll kind of help build some positive affirmation as well. Just try to scrub any negative feelings and thoughts and stories, even minor things that have occurred that day, out of your mind as much as possible. Put some good music on in your car as you're on your ride over, or something that makes you feel optimistic and feel good. Schedule for a morning interview so that you're more sharp and you have less time to kind of agonize over what it is that you're going to experience there. Interview day, make sure you get lots of rest. I know these are just basic things, but very important reminders. Get lots of rest. Avoid dairy for breakfast, as it kind of creates a little bit of a phlegmy tone in your voice. And so you want to avoid that. Deep breathing techniques for 10 to 15 minutes prior to your arrival there will help kind of calm your heart rate down, bring that pulse down, and allow you to communicate in a clear and comfortable and relaxed fashion, which is the type of image you want to give them, is that you're calm, relaxed, and confident. You want to, of course, arrive 5 minutes early. Please and thank you. Smile, lean forward in your body language. Show appropriate levels of enthusiasm to try to keep that in check. For some people, that's a little bit harder than others. You want to hold your eye contact with them. You want to create genuine impressions with them. You want to create genuine connections with the interviewers so that they feel that you are a person that they like and that they can trust. And finally, remember that it's so important to differentiate and to figure out what it is that's going to make you stand out amongst the crowd, because there are a lot of dental hygienists and there are a lot of opportunities for each dental hygienist to stand out in their own way. But you've really got to take action, and so I would encourage you to take the appropriate steps to figure out what it is that makes you different, and to work really hard to accentuate what those differences are in all of your materials, your interview, every approach that you have to landing a great dental hygiene job. And again, if you want to visit my website, I have tons and tons of free tips and strategies and articles to kind of help guide you through the process of almost every aspect of trying to land a great dental hygiene job. And then if you find yourself in a crunch, please reach out to me and ask for some help with your resume, or perhaps with your cover letter, or maybe some postcards. Whatever I can do to help you to land a great dental hygiene job, it's my mission and my focus and what I enjoy. So I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to answer questions as well. So feel free to reach out with any questions that you have. And you can see my email and my phone number there on the screen. And look forward to helping you with your search. And I wish you the best of luck. This is a tough thing, but I'll tell you what, if you find a great dental hygiene job, you won't care how much time you put into it. In fact, you'll be grateful that you put the extra time that it took to land the extra good job, the job that everybody wants, the job that is one you can stay at for a long time, the job where you feel appreciated, the job where you have coworkers that are not just coworkers, but they're friends, and same with the patients. You want that kind of job. And so you will want to go through every effort to make sure that you get that kind of job, because there's plenty of other ones that aren't that way. And you certainly deserve the best after you've been working so hard to get through dental hygiene school. So I wish you the best. And please, again, reach out if you have any other questions or if I can help in any other way. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you later.